World leaders have welcomed the newly announced US, Qatar, and Egypt co-brokered Gaza ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel. The European Union is considering lifting sanctions on Syria in multiple fields, according to a non-paper seen by Euronews.
U.S. President Joe Biden warned of a tech-industrial complex in his final address.
Workers participating in an opposition-called three-hour general strike were assaulted on the streets of Tbilisi. A ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas has been announced. The deal brokered by the United States, Qatar, and Egypt will offer much-needed respite for the people of Gaza who've been enduring 15 months of war. World leaders have welcomed this development with open arms.
Well, we've had many difficult days since Hamas began its terrible war. We've encountered roadblocks and setbacks. We've not given up. And now, after more than 400 days of struggle, a day of success has arrived.
Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's recently announced his resignation after weeks of domestic turmoil, also weighed in on the matter.
Canada stands ready to do whatever it can to ensure the success of this agreement. But more than that, this ceasefire gives us hope. Hope that we can now focus our attention on a true, lasting political solution to this conflict.
The United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary David Lammy says the deal is an opportunity for both sides to begin the healing process, and for this 15-month nightmare to end.
I welcome, particularly for those hostage families, that this deal has finally been broken, and for the agony and horrors of war and the Palestinian people in Gaza. Finally, this horror has come to an end.
And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who's been an instrumental player in the war, also expressed his relief following the announcement of the agreement. He thanked the mediators for their efforts in securing the deal, but stressed that now attention must turn towards achieving a permanent peace.
Ending the occupation and achieving a negotiated two-state solution with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security, in line with international law, relevant UN resolutions and previous agreements, remain an urgent priority. Only through a viable two-state solution can the aspirations of both peoples be fulfilled.
The deal is set to begin on Sunday, January 19th. It will be implemented in 3 stages, which will feature the release of dozens of hostages held in Gaza, the release of 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in Israel, and weeks of peace. The European Union is laying preliminary ground to a wide-range lifting of sanctions on Syria, according to a non-paper seen by Euronews. The bloc is considering lifting sanctions on transportation, exports of oil and gas, and financial and banking activities. The informal EU document says that any possible change to terrorist designations of al-Qaeda-affiliated groups, like Syria's ruling Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, must be implemented at the UN Security Council level before the bloc adopts it. The paper says that delisting terror groups will have to be conditions-based as to prevent any risk of financing terrorism. The non-paper was produced by the EU Council for negotiations and is expected to be substantively discussed during a meeting of EU foreign ministers on January 27th. The document states that the country's ousted president, Bashar al-Assad, and affiliates cannot benefit from the lifting and will still be subjected to sanctions.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from the Oval Office.
U.S. President Joe Biden used his farewell address on Wednesday to deliver stark warnings of a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of the ultra-wealthy.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
Biden referenced former President Dwight Eisenhower's final address in 1961, in which he warned of a military-industrial complex.
6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking.
Biden used his 15-minute address to offer a model for a peaceful transfer of power and raise concerns about his successor, Donald Trump, without mentioning his name. His remarks come after some of the world's richest individuals in the technology industry have flocked to Trump's side in recent months.
Defense ministers from over 20 NATO members are meeting in Brussels to discuss security and upcoming challenges to the alliance. NATO's chief Mark Rutte opened the two-day session with a clear goal: shifting to a wartime mindset.
To prevent war, we need to prepare for it. It's time to shift to a wartime mindset. And this means we need to make our defenses even stronger by spending more on defense, producing more and better defense capabilities. Russia is hard at work to try to weaken our democracies and chip away at our freedom. And it is not alone. It has China, North Korea and Iran by its side.
Rutte warned the alliance members that Europe's future is at stake, and NATO must do all it can to keep the people safe amidst growing security threats to the region. The next summit in 6 months' time will take place in The Hague.
The European Commission presented this Wednesday an action plan to prevent and detect cyber attacks quicker. In 2023, there were 309 cybersecurity incidents in health centres in the EU, a growing risk for both patients and hospitals. European Health Commissioner Oliver Varhelyi believes that hospitals should invest in cybersecurity as much as in medical equipment.
Do not overlook that part. We understand that the healthcare institutions are more focused on organizing the healthcare they provide for the patients, but this is part and parcel of it.
Despite the economic impact, which is estimated at an average of €300,000 in major incidents, Brussels has so far made no provision for financial support for medical institutions. According to the European Cybersecurity Agency, the greatest risks include the theft of patient data or the disruption of healthcare services. Poland, who has taken over the EU Council presidency, has named security as one of its key priorities. But for Warsaw, security has many faces. In an interview with Euronews, the Minister for European Affairs, Adam Szłapka, explained that one aspect of security is Europe being independent from Russia in terms of energy.
Naszym celem powinno być kompletne odcięcie się od dostaw paliw kopalnych z Rosji i dostaw surowców. Z dwóch powodów. Po pierwsze, żebyśmy my byli bezpieczniejsi, a po drugie dlatego, że nie możemy finansować reżimu, który dopuszcza się takich okrucieństw.
Europe has managed to overall reduce its energy dependence from Russia. Some countries, such as Hungary, Slovakia, or Austria, have been less enthusiastic. These nations could pose a challenge for Warsaw. When it comes to security, Warsaw has also said it's willing to participate in EU cooperation programs, including the joint purchase of ammunition and cooperating in strengthening critical infrastructure.
Polska ma tu zdanie jednoznaczne. Wszelkie inicjatywy wspólne, unijne muszą być komplementarne i muszą współpracować w tym zakresie z NATO. NATO jest podstawą naszego bezpieczeństwa.
For EU High Representative Kaja Kallas, NATO and the EU complement each other when it comes to ensuring Europe's security.
We have complementary roles. I mean, NATO is dealing with the military issues, the military planning for defense. But Europe, we deal with the European defense industry. We deal with European defense as whole, because we also have countries that are not in NATO.
Elaborate again, you didn't rule out military coercion.
Callas added that Europe's security challenges have only become more complicated and now involve hybrid threats against energy and food security, as well as cyber attacks.
Workers participating in a 3-hour general strike called by opponents of the incumbent Georgian Dream Party were attacked in the streets of Tbilisi. Footage circulating on social media showed baton-wielding individuals assaulting strikers. Local media says the individuals were titushkis, a term used to describe hired thugs, usually in service of government or political groups. Demonstrators chanted, blew whistles, and waved Georgian and EU flags side by side. A report suggests that more than 350 businesses participated in the strike. Organizers say the demonstration was intended to serve as a warning of what the country would face in isolation from Europe.
9, 8, 7.
Blue Origin launched a massive new rocket on its first test flight on Thursday. The space technology company founded by Jeff Bezos is sending up a prototype satellite to orbit Earth. The rocket carried an experimental platform designed to host satellites or release them into their proper orbits. While this mission was expected to last 6 hours, the rocket is built to haul spacecraft and eventually astronauts to orbit and also the moon.